Clean water for myself and for my family is really a sense of place. It's our recreation, it's our connection to our family's past and present and hopefully to our future family. And it's the economic opportunity that allows us to be here and stay here.
We want people to come, we want them to enjoy the lake. They come where the lakes are clean. They come where they can get in their boats, go swimming, they want to get out of the water and feel that they've been in a good, clean place. And we only do that by working together.
I have a hunch water, not oil, not gas, water is going to be the most precious natural resource of the 21st century. We do have an obligation to our kids, to grandkids, to leave it in the same shape or hopefully better shape than when we found it.
Water. It's the foundation for all living things. And to a Minnesotan and state visitor, it's a quality of life thing. For clean, fresh water is a scarce resource throughout much of the United States. Before development, waters ran pure in their natural state, but post-development land use practices and behaviors have had major impacts on water resources throughout the country and even portions of Minnesota. Enter the Pine River Watershed, a pristine region in north-central Minnesota at the crossroads of the rural North Woods and commerce. Tourism, agriculture, construction, and forestry are all components of our local economy, and all are stakeholders in the need for clean water. But we're not immune to degraded water, and negative effects on water quality can be seen within the Pine River Watershed now. We, as users, have choices to make. Development can exist and prosper while maintaining or even enhancing our precious water resources. For the Pine River Watershed, the quality of life benefits and economic incentives are far too important to risk.
Really, the whole economy up here revolves around the water. It's just extremely important that we have a resource that's attractive to people that are going to come in and, quite frankly, utilize it and enjoy it.
The term watershed describes an area of land where all of the water draining off it flows into the same place. This may be a wetland, river, or lake. The boundaries of a watershed are elevation-based and dictate that if a drop of water falls anywhere within these physical, geographic boundaries, it will collect and move downstream. This excludes water absorbed into the aquifer. As watersheds travel downstream, they collect to form larger drainages en route to their ultimate destination. So think of water as a temporary visitor rather than a permanent resident. No matter where water exists at any particular time or place, it's all flowing downhill from there. As a consequence, whatever enters your local water affects not only your immediate surroundings, but also all the users downstream. The Pine River Watershed is located in the north-central part of Minnesota and is one of the state's 81 localized watersheds. It flows south to adjoin the Mississippi River drainage basin and ultimately the Gulf of Mexico. The Pine River Watershed covers a little over 500,000 acres and includes the Whitefish Chain and Pelican Lake and a total of 441 lakes exceeding 10 acres in size. This is classic lake country, with tourism being the major economic driver based largely on water quality for recreational opportunities like fishing and hunting, wildlife enjoyment and boating, agriculture, construction services, manufacturing, and forestry provide additional employment in the region. In short, the Pine River Watershed is an environmentally rich headwaters watershed of the upper Mississippi River, with residents benefiting from a seasonal influx of tourism dollars and local industries.
I believe we can have development and we can have wildlife and we can have clean water, clear water, but we have to do it right. We have to make sure people understand what their effect is on the water and on the shoreline and what's happening on the lakes. We need to leave some of the wild there. We need to have buffers. We need to slow the water down. We can filter it, get the sediments out before it reaches the main lakes, before it reaches the main parts of the watershed. That's important for all of us, and we all have a piece to do on that.
Although the Pine River watershed is still in good health, it has seen significant growth and development during the last century. The three threats that pose the biggest risk to water quality are land use, sedimentation, and nutrient loading. The pre-settlement watershed consisted of a diversity of large forests and undeveloped lakes, rivers, and streams. Land use is the human use of land and involves the management and modification of the natural environment into built environments such as towns, roads, and farms. It's inevitable that human land use will alter the natural habitat to some degree, but growth and sustainability can coexist. It requires engaging in development practices that minimize disruption to soil, natural vegetation, and shorelines. For a farmer, this may mean leaving a streamside buffer between cattle lots and farm fields, which restrains and filters nutrient runoff before it enters the water. For a city planner, it's expanding green spaces to offset impermeable asphalt and concrete. This creates a permeable surface that absorbs water and reduces the amount of pollution being swept over the ground and through sewers into our waters. And for the lakeshore owner, it's maintaining native shoreline vegetation, which stabilizes banks and reduces runoff of nutrients.
One thing that is really easy for people that live in the city, people live on the lakeshore, is to just stop mowing a certain section of your grass. The native seeds are actually in the soil and they stay there for a long time, so if you just stop mowing a section of your grass, those native seeds will actually come up and you'll get some flowering plants that are better for the water around this area.
And central to it all is the protection of wetlands.
Wetlands provide a critical function. They capture sediments, reduce runoff, and provide critical habitat for wildlife.
Before you develop, make an assessment on how you can minimize altering the natural environment. Sedimentation is the process by which materials such as sand, soil, and stones are carried by water in stream, river, and lake bottoms. This is a naturally occurring process in any watershed, but compounded by improper land use practices. Man-made induced sedimentation is often spurred by the clearing of vegetation, which speeds soil erosion and increases sediment runoff into surface waters.
Livestock, agriculture in general requires a lot of water. By and large, most agriculturalists try very hard to be good stewards of the ground and of the water resources that we have. Our suggestion is to use riparian areas, leaving those areas in grass to help filter out sediments, nutrients, and whatever else, and slow the water down before she hits into the stream beds and creates a bigger problem.
Actions such as the building of roads and homes close to the water and shoreline owners removing aquatic and terrestrial plants for manicured landscaping allows for the free flow of sediment into the water. Heavy sediment loading covers natural substrate and often fish spawning grounds. It can smother bottom-dwelling aquatic organisms and their needed habitat, which affects the base of the food chain. Sedimentation also reduces water clarity, impacting fish and wildlife populations adapted to site feeding in clear water. Remove plants and root systems, and you remove the glue that holds soils, riverbanks, and lake shorelines in place.
Loons need clean, clear water. They hunt by sight. They need plenty of small fish. And if the water becomes turbid, they can't see. They dive down, they can't see into the water. But that turbidity also affects the whole food chain. It affects the small insects, the invertebrates, the small fish. And so you lose part of your food chain, but you also lose the hunting ability for these bigger wildlife species.
In the whitefish chain, sedimentation of historic walleye spawning grounds has significantly reduced natural walleye reproduction. In turn, the DNR must maintain a heavy stocking program to support a good fishable population. thoughtful development seeks to minimize the devastating effects of sedimentation by following development codes and maintaining buffer strips of natural shoreline vegetation. Plants and trees not only reduces the harmful effects of sedimentation, they're pleasing to the eye and enhance fish and wildlife populations as well.
Water is a precious commodity to all of us. Keeping it simple, something we can do is leave the vegetation intact. That'll help keep the waters clean.
Nutrient loading, or eutrophication, is a natural process of nutrient accumulation in surface waters over long periods of time. Certain land use practices greatly accelerate the amount of phosphorus and nitrogen entering the water. Immediate and visible symptoms of this condition are algae blooms, thick mats of aquatic vegetation, and reduced water clarity. Causes for excessive nutrient loading in the Pine River watershed are shoreline development and agricultural runoff. For shoreline owners, lawn fertilizer and leaking septic systems are a major contributor. The problem is compounded by the removal of shoreline vegetation, which acts as a roadblock to runoff. Reduce nutrient loading by avoiding the use of phosphorus and nitrogen-based fertilizers on lawns.
Perfection might have a new definition, a few dandelions here and there, not as many chemicals or any chemicals at all, and certainly not even as much lawn. You can cut down the maintenance part of, go out in the lake and recreate instead of mowing the lawn, if you just kind of look at things with a different eye.
Repair or replace aging septic systems and properly maintain new and existing ones. Establish healthy shorelines by leaving shoreline vegetation in place or planting native plants to restrain and filter nutrient runoff before it enters the water. And in farming, maintain buffer strips along riparian zones to reduce runoff of sediments and nutrients into the watershed and minimize the use of phosphorus and nitrogen-based fertilizers when possible. Of special concern is reducing the phosphorus load entering the whitefish chain. Tests have indicated rising phosphorus levels in the deep reaches of upper whitefish. Instituting good land management practices upstream and across all shoreline areas is essential to reducing this problem.
Well, what do you do with a gift? Well, usually, if it's a precious gift, you pass it on. And I think that's what we've all been charged to do. And much of that revolves around water. Not just the quantity of water, but the quality of water. And what can we do collectively to keep our lakes, our rivers, our wetlands as clean as possible? Because that really is the charge. Can you enjoy it without trashing it? It takes a little bit of care, a little bit of effort, but I think the answer is yes.
Please visit the following links for more information and for specifics on what you can do to help.